Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking. During this traditional season of Red and Green, I just want to take a moment of time to review something a little more on the blue side, namely the Blue-Shinkai Begeta custom headsculpt set from Demoniacal Fit. Now to be absolutely upfront here, this is not a unique headsculpt by any means. Frankly, it along with all the more recent stuff are basically just rehashes and recasts of the Broly Movie Goku and Vegeta figures, but with different sets of paint jobs on them in order to reflect the different forms. No real change has been made to the sculpts whatsoever, it's mostly just the paint application as well as the decal applications for things like the eyes and mouths. Which in the Evo sense here, basically means you have something that is going to be the same head sculpts you see in the back, but it is with a darker blue, as well as different eye decals to reflect the slight changes in state between the regular Super Saiyan Blue as well as the Evo look here. Now, mind you, how that seems to have been handled when you take it out of the package, it's a very clean presentation for the most part. A nice skin tone is being used on there. The blue does have a nice little shimmer onto it, so it doesn't stand out too much from the rest of the more recent figures. And in terms of the eye decals, they do have that little fit on there, a little pupil detail that is a nice touch. What I will happen to say though is the faces themselves, as I was trying to move that first one, was definitely a very snug fit, and you kind of have to mess around with things in order to get the faces to swap between. When you do get them on though, after a little work, they do seem to snap on there and stay on there very well, which is actually something I can't say about the original figure. I have a little bit of problems on that. So the first one was the neutral face. This one is kind of a more standard yelling face in this case. Your kind of angry grimacing face for Vegeta. And I believe the last one here is the smirking one, which has no regular blue equivalent, and in the original figure, this was only used on the Super Saiyan God face, aka the red one. While we do a look at the side by side here, I just want to bring up two things that do come to mind and I think it's worth noting. Namely one, the skin tone on the Evo heads is slightly different compared to the real deal. It's actually slightly rootier, which gives it a slightly more kind of an even skin tone, not as yellowish I find, which I'm going to be honest, in my preference, I actually prefer the Evo heads in that regard. Now the second thing, which is probably becoming a little more noticeable as we're looking at the heads there, is aside from the decal placement, which is mostly even here, you notice that the heads are not quite the same shape, especially the faces around the chin and such. That's because overall, while it's a fairly decent casting, I would say, between the bootleg heads and the real heads, or the originals, the overall castings are slightly off kilter. Namely, they're slightly smaller than what the real deal should be, and in terms of that, that will also affect how the pegs and stuff tend to fit on there, and how the hair bits and faces fit on the faces too. Namely, the faces I find on the real one tend to slip in and out pretty easily with a pretty smooth motion, but on the SS Evo head here, they tend to be a little harder to get on there, and honestly a bit of a snugger fit, which can be a good or a bad thing, depending on your opinion. Namely, the one issue I do have though is when you're trying to fit the Evo head onto the peg, you're going to need to heat this thing up in order to get it in order to be malleable enough to get on there, or you're going to have to do that in combination with actually a little bit of a drill bit, which is frankly what I had to do in my case. Once we do happen to get the thing on there, as you can see, honestly it's a really nice fit overall though, and I'll be frank, there's enough I like about this that I think I'm actually going to keep my Vegeta this way. The choice on the blue was honestly dead on there and makes this figure and its head much more vibrant than what the original offering actually gave you. And a little extra detail about the skin tone and the pupils make it a little more lively. So, yep, this is how Vegeta's going to stay in my case. So overall, if you can find this for around the original 30, I'm personally all for it. But before we wrap this video up, a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and yours. Take care. Catch you all next time, and well, let's see if I can get one more video out before this year wraps up. See ya.